Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for being here. Do you remember when you first started practicing Buddhism? Or maybe you know someone who's thinking about starting to practice Buddhism. Have you ever heard the words, either saying it to yourself, saying it out loud, or from somebody else? It's too hard. Why do I have to study so much? I mean, I'm not unsympathetic to that thought, because we live in a country of availability. We live in a time where everything's an app on a phone. And basically the criteria for doing the default religions in this country, and maybe in most countries, is you just walk in the door and suddenly you're a member. You know, you can make more effort, and you can study, and you can do scripture chases, and you can study, and even some groups have qualifiers. You know, they use the age-old method of putting tests in front of you so that you can get a ribbon or a certificate or a plaque, or somehow that makes you superior to others, and therefore you're a better whatever one of these you are. But that's an elective thing. It's not required. And we have this in Buddhism as well, but Buddhism is such a profoundly awakening activity that most of us are very excited by the profundity of it. That it is extremely simple, but when it comes to talking about it, or fully understanding why it's so functional in our lives, we tend to study, and we tend to develop language around it, and our language can get misleading, and so we have to correct it. And so to the non-initiate or the beginner, and for some of us, you know, that I got to learn more about it in order to do it correctly, is kind of a plus. Not for everyone. Most of human nature is kind of like, I just want to turn it on and it works, right? But for some of us who like puzzles, who like figuring things out, who are natural problem solvers, the idea that in order to really understand something requires some effort, and that there's a payoff to that effort, that you get better at it, that's really appealing. But not all of us are like that. And I would venture to say that even those of us who are like that have moments of, why isn't this clearer? Why isn't this easy? Why is there so much blah, blah, blah? Why can't I just do it? Well, the answer is you can. It isn't hard. It doesn't require that much study. There are some simple ways to look at this. But I also have to have a caveat and say, you know, what in your life have you ever accomplished of value that didn't come with some degree of effort? I mean, even if you're very talented at something, like, you know, I'm a painter, I'm an artist, I'm a drawer, I'm a draftsman. I like to work in my hands, and I'm very visual, and I can translate those visuals into forms and lines and information that are easily readable to others. Okay, so I can't tell you how many times I've been told, oh my gosh, how do you do that? I can't make a straight line with a ruler, which of course is an exaggeration, but I understand the sentiment, right? So we all have talents, things that we seem to be able to do with little effort. But, and maybe Buddhism is one of those things. Why not? I had a theory many, many decades ago that after hearing a lot of comments, like I said earlier, about I can't draw a straight line with a ruler, that I think talent, quote, what we call talent, something people have a certain facility to do, seemingly effortless, unless they hunker down and want to improve that talent. There's always effort to be made, right? But my theory was pretty simplistic. It was that basically, I think that our talents are the things that we tend to not respect about ourselves because they come easily, which is a real telling thing about human nature, isn't it? No pain, no gain. If there's not a test for it, then how can you claim to be expert at it? Um, what's the other one that I despise this one, and it's everywhere. Capable of many things, but master of none. Something to that effect, right? A man of all trades, but a master of none. To which I respond in my life experience as a martial artist, as a Buddhist, as an artist, as a student of life. I've never met a truly a master, a person I would consider a master, to be single-sided. They're always multifaceted. If you don't see them as multifaceted, it's because you're not looking closely enough. Because any true master that I've met in martial arts, or in the arts, or in education, or in Buddhism, they are people of many efforts in many areas, many of which they accomplish great things in. They may not be masters in each individual thing that they take on, but they're very capable. And all of that capacity is what lends them to their mastery of whatever their main focus is in life. That is a more accurate picture, I think, of the equation of human effort. Even if your effort is to do nothing, be lazy, you can become a master of that, but invariably you will need to know many things in order to pull that off. I'm not suggesting it as an avenue of endeavor. I'm simply saying what I think should be obvious. And I think this dovetails beautifully with the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. You can't know something at a truly profound level if you haven't investigated all of the things that feed into it. In other words, all of Buddha's teachings and non-Buddhist teachings. But that may not be the way to start. And so this comes back to my earlier point. If that's the way that information is presented to you or to someone else about the practice of Buddhism, it's going to seem overwhelming. Why would somebody want to go into a church to meet with friends and buddies, to make business connections, to feel a social group, if at first they're presented with a 4-year college course in order to gain entry? Just open the door. The curiosity will take care of itself. And this practice is so profound that the curiosity has to develop. And if it doesn't quite yet, maybe it needs to simmer for a while. It's exciting to know that you can attain your Buddha nature immediately. Just start doing it, and it happens. Conspicuous benefits, right? We talk about it all the time when you first start this practice. But we're creatures of, how should I say? We take things for granted. We become attuned to every new skill, opportunity, and feeling that we have. And within minutes, we have expectation. So if it doesn't happen every single time, then the payoff, right? We're trained like that. It's a very capitalistic kind of way of thinking. Anyway, so I just wanted to remind you before I get into this go show. Oddly enough, the essentials for attaining Buddhahood. And before you think, oh gosh, here's another one of 20 versions or 20, what should I say, 20 videos, 20 parts. Essentials for attaining Buddhahood is like 3-4 pages, maybe 5 pages long. It's not very long. So, I don't know, Nichiren may be speaking to this very subject. The essentials for attaining Buddhahood. Here we go. The Expedient Means chapter in Volume 1 of the Lotus Sutra states, quote, "The wisdom of the Buddhas is infinitely profound and immeasurable." A commentary says that the riverbed of reality is described as infinitely profound because it is boundless, and that the water of wisdom is described as immeasurable because it is hard to fathom. Is not the meaning of the sutra and the commentary that the way to Buddhahood lies within the two elements of reality and wisdom? Reality means the true nature of all phenomena, which is the first thing as human beings that we obfuscate. So our lives is this balance of constant aspiration to things we're attached to, desire, want in our environment, want to make permanent, which is contrary to reality, and a slow roll and boil of our curiosity that says, but isn't there something else? Isn't there something more or something less? Or what am I not getting? But it's completely overwhelmed by our cravings, right? And wisdom means the illuminating and manifesting of this true nature. So there it is. We have our nature as human beings, which obfuscates, creates illusions constantly. But we know inherently that it is an illusion, that it is ephemeral, temporary, that things are always changing. So what's beneath it? Oh, but look at that. Oh, but look at this shiny thing. Oh, what's the joke? Oh, squirrel. Right? We have a hard time staying focused on that. So what Nichiren is saying is the wisdom is our penetrating thinking, our focused thinking that challenges all of those illusions and attachments to see what's really going on here. Let's get underneath those layers of obfuscation and let's see what's really happening. The older we get, the more curious usually we get about that. I think largely because we get more hints as we grow older. Yeah. In our teens, we start to question things a lot. And then we have rapid fire aha moments where, oof, I really screwed up, right? How do I avoid that pain again? It's hard fought if you have no or improper guidance. It's rough going through your teen years. And then finally, your 20s, you settle down and you start to look around a little bit more. Buddhism is very much a tool to help turn the headlights on. Thus, when the riverbed of reality is infinitely broad and deep, the water of wisdom will flow ceaselessly. When this reality and wisdom are fused, one attains Buddhahood in one's present form. Boom. Now that sounds simple. I think you'll agree. That's pretty simple. When you take reality for what it truly is, with the wisdom to see what it truly is, then you've attained Buddhahood. You've awakened. And so the very next statement is how? The sutras expounded prior to the Lotus Sutra cannot lead to Buddhahood because they are provisional and expedient teachings that separate reality and wisdom. The Lotus Sutra, however, unites the two as a single entity. The sutra says that the Buddhas open the door of wisdom to all living beings, show it, cause them to awaken to it, and induce them to enter its path. By realizing this, Buddha wisdom, one attains Buddhahood. So I could say this is something I've been repeating all along in many different ways. This isn't exactly what Nichiren is saying. And if you look at it, you know, I said earlier that it's actually really very simple. If you can grasp the concept that your Buddhahood is extant, when you stand in the woods next to a creek and you're suddenly overwhelmed by just being there in that moment, or when you watch a beautiful bird soar through the sky, or maybe it's a mountain range for you, maybe it's snow-covered mountains, maybe it's that moment when you're skiing down a mountain where the sound, the effort, the breathing, the air, the coldness, the chill, everything combines to just, you have this moment of just timeless awe. There's no time. When a child is born, when you're in the room as your child is born, when you finally understand that piece of code, or when you get that math problem that has eluded you for so long, or when you fall in love. I mean, there are moments we experience just as human beings that transcend time. They are peaks into peaking, as in seeing something else other than the normal day-to-day preoccupations of life. Buddhism is about understanding that moment. But there's the rub. See, we're curious beings. And even though we see those moments and we know what they feel like and we want them again, and maybe that turns us into something like adrenaline junkies, so we climb the face of mountains all the time so we can keep getting to that spot, that aha, or surfers, or whatever. We find some activity that gives us that sense. Buddhism says, but this is the real life process. Everything else is illusions of your mind. And we know how to subdue those illusions and keep you in that space. Really. Yeah, really. And this is where some of us need more convincing than others. For some, simply chanting the Daimoku with a mandala and a small altar, very simple practice. We can attain and easily enter that realm of awe. For some of us, more stubborn, we need to dissect it more. We need to know why, how, what. And that's okay. The thing about Buddhism is that if the more you want to go down the rabbit hole, the more secure information there is. You know, practice, just like life, can have its ebbs and flows. We are, after all, part of a larger society that has many influences and oppressions and so forth that we have to deal with day to day. It's not like we're all sequestered in a hall where we can all get our enlightenment and stay there. For one thing, that's not full, perfect enlightenment either. Because to do it alone or with a small group isn't the same as achieving it within the greater society and influencing that society. Right? Bodhisattva practice. Those moments are always greater. So, Buddhism has tremendous scholarship, and you can go as far as you want, but you don't have to. You only need to do as much as you need to get that awe, to get that awakening. Right? I had a teacher one time who said, I love greed. And I thought, really? Doesn't seem like that's be a goal. He'd say, no. I love it when people are just naturally greedy, because when they start to learn this practice, they won't be able to help themselves from digging deeper into what's going on here. They become voracious scholars. I love that greed. I thought that was an interesting way to hendokuyaku, to turn poison into medicine. Take that natural ability for avarice and turn it into an engine of awakening in Buddhism. It's amazing. So Nichiren continues here. This inner enlightenment of the Buddha is far beyond the understanding of voice hearers and pratyeka Buddhas. Now he's talking about different levels of monks, right? And those who can... it's an interesting statement because it's exactly what I'm talking about. There are those who are dedicated to scholarship, but they become perennial studiers without actualizing. And the pratyeka Buddhas are more about actualizing with what they know than they are to experience what is already there. See, there's all sorts of subtle ways human beings are cleverly creating obstacles to their own enlightenment. Right? It's easy. It's easy. Well, you have to be easy. That's not easy. This is why the Expedient Means chapter goes on to say, quote, not one of the voice hearers or pratyeka Buddhas is able to comprehend it. What then are these two elements of reality and wisdom? They are simply the five characters of Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, of the five being Myoho Renge Kyo. Shakyamuni Buddha called forth the bodhisattvas of the earth and entrusted to them the five characters that constitute the essence of the sutra. This is the teaching that was transferred to the bodhisattvas who had been the disciples of the Buddha since the remote past. In other words, already already imbued with Buddhahood, which we all are. We are the bodhisattvas of the earth, and we already have our Buddha nature. It simply needs to get all the other samsaric illusions out of the way. That doesn't mean to annihilate them, to deny them. We know we're human, but as humans, this is how we can experience the full reality of what it is to experience Buddhahood in this life. The Lotus Sutra states that the Bodhisattva's superior practices and the others will appear in the first 500 years of the latter day of the law to propagate the five characters, the embodiment of the two elements of reality and wisdom. The sutra makes this perfectly clear. Who would possibly dispute it? I, Nichiren, am neither Bodhisattva's superior practice nor his envoy, but I precede them, spreading the five characters to prepare the way. Bodhisattva's superior practices receive the water of the wisdom of the priori and supreme law from the thus come one Shakyamuni, and causes it to flow into the wasteland of the people's lives in the evil world of the latter age. This is the function of wisdom. Shakyamuni Buddha transferred this teaching to Bodhisattva superior practices, and now Nichiren propagates it in Japan. With regard to the transfer of teachings, it is divided into two categories, general and specific. If you confuse the general with the specific, even in the slightest, you will never be able to attain Buddhahood, and will wander in suffering through endless transgressions, transmigrations of births and deaths, moment to moment, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. You'll never break out of your samsaric pattern, your momentum of karma. For example, the voice hearers in Shakyamuni Buddha's lifetime received the seeds of Buddhahood from Shakyamuni in the distant past, when he was the 16th son of the Buddha Great Universal Wisdom Excellence. Therefore, they could not attain enlightenment by following Amida, medicine master, or any other Buddha. To illustrate, if a family member brings home water from the ocean, the entire family can use it. But were they to refuse even a single drop of that water and instead go looking for water from some other ocean, it would be terribly misguided and foolish. In the same way, to forget the original teacher who had brought one the water of wisdom from the great ocean of the Lotus Sutra, and instead follow another, would surely cause one to sink into the endless sufferings of birth and death. One should abandon even one's teacher if he is or she is misguided, though there will be cases where this is not necessary. One should decide according to the principles both of the world and of Buddhism. Monks in the latter day of the law are ignorant of the principles of Buddhism and are conceited, so they despise the correct teacher and fawn on patrons. True monks are those who are honest and who desire little and yet no satisfaction. Volume 1 of the Words and Phrases of the Lotus Sutra states, quote, "Those who have yet to attain the truth should humble themselves before the highest principle, which is comparable in heaven to heaven, and feel abashed before all the sages. Then they will be monks with a sense of shame. When they manifest insight and wisdom, then they will be true monks." So again, I've substituted the word monk many times as student. We are all students of life, certainly, and of Buddhism, if our aim is to gain access to our highest potential experience of this life process of which we are a manifestation, without all the attachments to what it is to be manifest, which is samsara. The Nirvana Sutra states, "If even a good monk sees someone destroying the teachings and disregards him, failing to reproach him, to oust him, or to punish him for his offense, then you should realize that that monk is betraying the Buddha's teachings." Right? So it's one thing as human beings to see different flavors of things, but if those flavors are contradictions of the original flavor, and you don't reproach it for not being that, at least identify it. Again, the emperor's new clothes comes to mind, right? If you're not willing to say, emperor's naked, then you're deluding yourself along with anyone else. You won't attain enlightenment. You have to not only know the truth, but be able to identify it and not be afraid to identify it, because your environment is you. Do you see? It's not just about you, yourself, which is an illusion in itself, because your environment is also self, you. That's a real hard point to embrace. We want to see ourselves as such individual things. And we are individual points, but we are individual points within a network of points. That without that network of points, we would be irrelevant as a point. Do you see? But if he ousts the destroyer of the law, reproaches him, or punishes him, then he is my disciple and a true voice hearer. End quote. You should etch deeply in your mind the two words see and disregard in the phrase sees someone destroying the teachings and disregards him, failing to reproach him. End quote. Both teacher and followers will surely fall into the hell of such incessant suffering if they see enemies of the Lotus Sutra, but disregard them and fail to reproach them. The great teacher Nanhui says that they, quote, will fall into hell along with those evil persons, end quote. To hope to attain Buddhahood without speaking out against slander is as futile as trying to find water in the midst of fire, or fire in the midst of water. No matter how sincerely one believes in the Lotus Sutra, if one is guilty of failing to rebuke slander of the law, one will surely fall into hell, just as a single crab leg will ruin 1,000 pots of lacquer. This is the meaning of the passage in the Lotus in the sutra, quote, because the poison has penetrated deeply and their minds no longer function as before, end quote. So, where are we time-wise here? Okay. So, this is an easy point to relate to our daily lives, right? So much goes on in our daily lives now that didn't exist in the 13th century, surely. But the point is the same. If you don't reproach someone who claims to be doing something, and that's an important point too. Let's find a mundane example. There's a difference here, and I know it would be easy to slip into the idea of righteousness. And I would argue that that's not far from what's being taught here, but it's also very different. It's not about being right or being superior. It's about that insight of reality with wisdom. So, surely, if you were a teacher of young people on swimming, how to swim, how to stay afloat, all aspects of swimming, not just moving through the water, but how to stay buoyant, how to control your mind's anxieties so that you can stay alive while you're in water and you can't touch the ground, right? There would be certain things you would have to instill confidence in people's attitudes about what they were doing in the water, things they could do, things they couldn't do. And one day you saw somebody else teaching people how to swim, but he was teaching that they should always look for something they could grab their feet on so they could get their head above water. If you're a dedicated teacher, a true teacher of staying buoyant and swimming in the water, that idea that wherever you are in whatever water you are, that you should find something with your feet that you could stand upon so you could breathe and stay out of the water, you might dismiss it as being well, that's a silliness. But by doing that, you would be allowing that teaching to continue. You would allow that misunderstanding of what it is to be buoyant and survive in water. And you would become complicit in that unlife-affirming, really, teaching, that bad teaching. Right? So it's incumbent upon you as a teacher who knows a more profound and helpful truth, and more to the point, your very survival depends on it. You should go down to the riverside, the pool, whatever, and explain to these students, or at least to the teacher, pull her aside and say, if that is the way you're teaching your students to keep their head above water, you are doing them a tremendous disservice and possibly instrumental in their death. You cannot teach it that way. If there is something to stand on, perhaps that's something you can talk about, but this is not what should be taught in order to get one's head above water. This is very destructive. This is wrong. Not because I'm better than you, not because I'm righteous about it and I'm going to save all these children, but because you, as a teacher, are doing this incorrectly. You do not teach truth. You teach an illusion that can cost people their lives. Do you see what I mean? That's not being righteous. That's correcting a wrong. It's empirically wrong. Right? Almost as wrong as teaching people they can breathe in water. Don't teach people that. Unless you have scuba equipment, and that has a whole other thing attached to it, right? You understand what I mean. And this is what Nichiren is saying, and this is what Shakyamuni was saying. You can't simply tolerate other versions, quote unquote, of something because other versions have other agendas. And they actually take people away from, there's only one way to do this. The one vehicle, Myoho Renge Kyo. Not broomstick, not, stand on your head and hold your hand this way. Those are nonsense. And you have to be able to point that out. For your own sake. Because if you do not, then you are allowing that influence into your life and you will block your own enlightenment. The sutra states, quote, those persons who had heard the law dwelled here and there in various Buddha lands, constantly reborn in company with their teachers, end quote. And if, quote, one stays close to the teachers of the law, one will speedily gain the Bodhisattva way. By following and learning from these teachers, one will see Buddhas as numerous as Ganges sands. A commentary says, quote, originally one followed this Buddha and for the first time conceived the desire to seek the way. And by following this Buddha again, one will reach the stage where there is no retrogression, end quote. Another commentary says, in the beginning, one followed this Buddha or Bodhisattvas and formed a bond with him. And so it will be through this Buddha or Bodhisattva that one will gain one's goal. Above all, be sure to follow your original teacher so that you are able to attain Buddhahood, the original teacher being Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni Buddha is the original teacher for all people. So he says it directly, right? And moreover, he is endowed with the virtues of sovereign and parent. Because I have expounded this teaching, I have been exiled and almost killed. As the saying goes, good advice grates on the ear. But still, I am not discouraged. The Lotus Sutra is like the seed, the Buddha is like the sower, and the people are like the field. If you deviate from these principles, not even I can save you in your next life, in your future. With deep respect, Nichiren. So, I hope that I've dissected that enough that you understand that it isn't that the teaching is so complex, it's that our human minds need this complexity in order to adjust every single one of our illusions in our minds, which, by the way, is another way of saying your own particular path. You have innumerable illusions, all compounded on one another, telling you what is daylight, what is grass, what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. They're general concepts, but they're fed by this just giant, I'll use the word ginormous, quantity of decisions that have been made before your birth and after your birth as to the way that you see the world, the way that you experience the world. But the world is something that is also made by you. That's a critical point. And Buddhism allows you to get under the covers of that and see what's going on in here. See where the actual truth of all of this is, which is a big, awesome quietude, observation, an entertainment that we're actively engaged in. It's exciting. It's rewarding. It's loving. It's beautiful. It's awe-inspiring. Just like when the first time you saw, insert here, an experience. That's where we need to be all the time. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. From that vantage point, all of these other illusions start to get chipped away. They start to melt. They start to have less of a hold on you. less of an emotion about you, less of an attachment and an influence on you. Because you can see them as the little passion plays they are of samsara, as part of a much broader life process. I hope that clarifies the matter for you a little bit. I don't know if that helps you make it sound simpler to a new initiate. That's why oftentimes all you need to do is say, here, come here, try this. Okay, this is how you pronounce Myoho Renge Kyo. And we do a little rhythm here. So we're going to sing together. That's what chant means. Chant is singing. And by singing, we're going to occupy our mind to keep this correct rhythm. We're going to hear it. We're going to see it because we have a mandala to focus on. We're going to feel it. So we're going to immerse ourselves in this song. Sing it with me. Check this out. For 30 minutes, 30 minutes. You don't have half an hour? Come on. Let's do this for 30 minutes. What do you think of that at the end of 30 minutes? How do you feel? What are you thinking? All of it's okay. All of it's good. You feel that in your body? Do you tingle anywhere? Do you feel oxygenated? Do you feel more energy? Do you feel tired? What do you feel? You want to do this again? That's all it needs to be. Sometimes we need to do that to ourselves. Oh, I need to read another Gosho. Oh, I need to clean up and shave and wear a suit. You know, we create all these obstacles. Just get in front of your mandala. Awaken your Gohonzon. Chant. Just do it. There's plenty of time for scholarship. It's always there. You got a question? Dig into scholarship. Dig into sutras. Randomly pick out. You know, for me, perfection of wisdom was actually very important to my practice. It satisfied that digging deep into how the brain works, and that was very useful for me. But that's not for everyone. Maybe the Vimalakirti Sutra will suit you. Maybe a certain story in the Lotus Sutra caught your attention, but you want to dive deeper into some of the concepts that were just casually thrown around in there. And just dive into that. Dive into the 10 worlds, or the five or the 3 realms, or anything that you're reading that goes, okay, what is that? So stop, take your time, you've got your life. Dig into that. I guarantee you will learn a lot more than just that. It's fascinating. It's like archaeology. Or just chant. Your Buddhahood is undeniable. All you have to do is awaken it. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to download the podcast wherever you get those, the Buddhahood podcast. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much.